you can start about this PRDs. Why we are taking this video is basically in internet is one of the mainstream potential and powerful source, and PRDS history in a basic, in a nutshell you can say. And also last year in PRDS, one of the Dalit camera team member went to take a picture of PRDS rally. It was a massive rally. Newspaper didn't report it.
Yeah, they do report, but
very slightly.
Yeah.
But it was a massive rally.
That's right. Yeah.
But they are not seen as a political body. So we can start from there. And at present, how do you see them?
But it's actually a very tricky question, I would tell you, because if you say something, there's the politics of that. So I have a feeling that the politics need not be articulated always in the way we think about politics. So if you mean by politics the question of power, then the articulation could be very different, really. That's what I have been thinking about. Because when I, as a student of history, when I look at this movement, its history, which I try to do a little bit, all through its career, so beginning from formally 1910, but it goes little backwards in time. 1905, when the deliberations of these people starts, or even a little earlier, when Heugel Johanan and his friends started this movement. I guess it was political, it was social, it was religious, and so on. So my feeling is that it's very difficult to differentiate, as we do conventionally. Politics that's in a particular box, or the social in another box, the economics or economic in another box. So that was not really possible, because it was politics which had a very, very powerful religious overtone. So possibly we should ask a question: what did it mean in terms of power? So where you have politics, where you have religion, where you have social, everything comes together, right? But today what happens is that because of our contemporary politics, where you have all these kinds of things in a very, very murky situation, it becomes absolutely difficult to talk about the politics of that, because this is my personal feeling, that even the followers of PRDS, or even the leadership of the movement, could say that we are apolitical, we don't have politics. I haven't heard them saying, but it's quite likely, you can contradict me, it's quite possible that they would say that we don't have politics. But if you think in terms of power, then you know that it is really political. They were talking about issues of domination, and which is again political and so on. So my feeling is that because I personally happened to go to this place several times, then witnessing this annual feast of the founder of the movement, or even the occasions of prayer, that is the death anniversary of the founder of the movement. So you get all these things articulated, their ideas, aspirations, the desires of people, and so on. So if you really observe that, then you find the politics of that. But it is absolutely different from the sort of meaning that anybody would attribute to politics today. I mean, suddenly, what comes to our mind is political parties, their rallies, and so on, or even the demands of political parties, or the larger society itself. So that is different from the politics of PRDS, but it is very political in the sense that they have been articulating the problems of the, one could say that it's a Dalit community, but as they would say, they are the people who had suffered slavery. So there are a lot of categories that they have been using, like the most current one perhaps today is Aadiyar, the first people, that kind of categories have been invented and they use it. So which makes it absolutely political in that sense. But then it is, if you ask me to differentiate politics from religion, in this case I don't think it is possible. It is impossible to differentiate that.
So, one more thing is also related to this PRDS. For example, in Kerala especially, today we went to this Ayangali festival, Ayangali memorial thing. DHRM is conducting. They were kind of a Buddhist.
So was it in
Pathanamthitta. No, it was in Pathanamthitta nearby. So that I was wondering, and Narayana Guru, the history of movements has been religiously connected here, which is not the case in Tamil Nadu. So that is that something, because even now the present DHRM is in a way trying to bring to them into this kind of a framework, like Buddhism and religious kind of a thing. Also one part of the DHRM activity, and PRDS also for that matter, and so many things are there. So in that case, how do you see this in Kerala Dalit movement? How?
No, but see, this is actually a very complex question. What I tell you, because if you take the other parts of India also, so we have a lot of books in the last 10-15 years dealing with these kinds of things. Most of these Dalit movements of 20th century, if you really follow the trajectory of that, and even earlier, then you will see that they had a very, very serious engagement with the question of religion. And I think it could be due to the the relationship between caste and religion at one point. So if you take the movement of this gentleman Manguram, about which Mark Gugensmeer has written a lot. He has this full-length book on that. Or even the writings of Travel of the Bay, and most recently our own friend Ram Rawat, he has a book on reconsidering untouchability. He doesn't speak exclusively on religion, but then you have references to that. So you have a long list of scholars who worked on this interconnection between Dalit politics and religion. And if you look at again Milind Vagangar's study on Kapil, so this religious question comes out. So my feeling is that because caste, untouchability, etc. were related to religion, most of these early critiques took the form of a religious critique. That was quite natural because there was a huge legitimacy of caste and untouchability built up by Hindu, quote unquote. I know you have a lot of other kinds of debates on that, of religion. So much so that you have this religion as a very, very significant thing. Now, my feeling is that, as Raju has asked me about the difference between, say, Srinarayana Guru's movement, and that of, Poigel Yohanan, who subsequently came to be venerated as Sri Kumara Gurudeva. And I find there is a sea of difference because we all know that Narayana Guru was reworking the Sanskritic tradition, Advaita Vedantic tradition. So whereas I haven't come across any of these Dalit religious leaders who established their own path ever doing this, except perhaps the Shubhananda Gurudev, and again he has had a lot of things to do with PRDS or Poigel Yohanan in the beginning. But then he establishes a different movement and it becomes today a quote-unquote reformist Hindu thing. But even there, I have recently happened to read many of his poems, songs which are sung in their congregation, where I found that there is a huge crossover of themes. If you read some of these, these songs of Shubhananda Gurudevan, you might want to see those songs as having something to do with what Poigel Yohanan himself or some of his songs. So my feeling is that the religion was a very, very substantial kind of engagement. But the resources have been completely different because none of these, whether Ayyankali you speak about or the Poigel Yohanan, who became subsequently Kumara Gurudeva, you don't find them using, the Hindu mythology in the sense that they are, believers in these movements, because some of these movements do have religious character. But I don't think during the initial phases of these movements, anybody ever talked about Hindu mythology. So you don't have any reference to that. All those things happens only very late. But this absolute concern with religion was completely there right from the beginning, because as I said in the beginning, it was a critique of religion and desire to go beyond the sort of this caste Hindu worldview, or whatever you want to call it, whether religion or a kind of ideology or a worldview. So for them it was absolutely essential to have a critique of their religion, and that's why I think in the case of these movements in Kerala, there is a very huge concern with religion. And I think by and large this is true for many other parts of India also. Now this next point is to look at the engagement with missionary Christianity from the middle of the 19th century, because they were the ones to have a very, very substantial critique of caste based on religion. So many movements of Dalits in the early 20th century had to take this as a serious one, but I don't think everybody did the same way, because for instance, if you look at Iyengar's movement, it was not a religious movement, it was completely secular. In that sense, a very modern movement. But it doesn't mean that the other movements were not modern, because religion is very much, in the way we understand it today, is part of modernity. So it becomes, in that sense, difficult to differentiate. But because of the implications of caste and religion, I guess there is a very curious kind of relationship between both. So,